and worship Vishwamitra. At his invitation, the party rested there for the night. The next morning, the caravan again proceeded on its journey toward the kingdom of Videha. Upon reaching the outskirts of Mithila, the capital city of Maharaj Janaka, Lord Rama saw an old desolate hermitage. After Rama inquired about it from Vishwamitra, the rishi explained, this ashrama formerly belonged to Gautama rishi, who practiced austerities here along with his wife Ahalya. Once upon a time, knowing that Gautama was away from his ashrama, King Indra assumed the form that closely resembled the rishi. He went to the ashram in that disguise, and approached Gautama's wife, saying, "My dear beautiful one, I desire union with you immediately. Please do not disappoint me." Although Ahalya recognized that it was Indra disguised as Gautama, she did not refuse him, for she too eagerly desired his embraces. Thus the union took place, and after their lusty urges had been gratified, Ahalya begged, "O Indra, please protect us from the wrath of my husband Gautama." Indra assured Ahalya that he would depart immediately, unnoticed by anyone. However, while Indra was sneaking away from Gautama's ashrama, the rishi suddenly returned. When Gautama saw Indra disguised as himself, his head hanging down in shame, he could well understand the nature of his misconduct. Thus, with great anger, the rishi cursed Indra. "O lusty fool, may your testicles immediately fall off as a punishment for this abominable act." No sooner had the curse been pronounced when Indra's testicles fell from his body and dropped to the ground. Then, after entering his ashrama, Gautama cursed his wife. "O wretched woman, from now on you shall be incapable of eating or drinking, and you will have to lie down on a bed of ashes." Thus, Ahalya was turned into a pillar of stone. Gautama then said, "Only when Lord Rama visits this spot in the distant future will you be absolved of your sin, freed from all lusty desires, and reunited with me as your husband." Saying this, Gautama departed for the Himalayas. Meanwhile, Indra informed the demigods, "I have successfully thwarted Gautama Rishi's attempt to attain my position as king of heaven by making him angry. Now, however, in the process, I have lost my testicles. Now, somehow or other, please arrange for my manhood to be restored." Responding to Indra's plea, the demigods arranged for the Pitas to castrate a ram and grafted its testicles onto Indra's body. After narrating this story, Vishwamitra invited Lord Rama to enter the ashram of Gautama. As soon as Rama entered the hermitage, Ahalya regained her original form, dazzling with ascetic splendor. Indeed, upon Ahalya's liberation, there was a sudden shower of celestial flowers with drums beating in the heavens. Rama and Lakshmana respectfully touched Ahalya's feet, and she reciprocally welcomed the two brothers and Vishwamitra, Gautama Rishi, and Vishwamitra. Gautama Rishi then came to be reunited with his wife and worshipped Lord Rama and Lakshmana with great reverence. Thereafter, the caravan entered Mithila. Upon arriving at the sacrificial arena of King Janaka, Lord Rama was pleased to see that thousands of brahmanas had assembled from all parts of the world. Hearing of Vishwamitra's arrival, Maharaj Janaka hurriedly went to greet him and addressed him, saying, "O best of saintly persons, this sacrifice will take 12 days to complete, with the demigods appearing personally to accept their share of the offerings. My dear sir, please tell me who these two exalted personalities are that have accompanied you. Indeed, they appear to be like gods in human form." Vishwamitra replied, "These two young men are Rama and Lakshmana, the sons of King Dasharath. They have come here to examine the great bow that you have been worshipping. I brought them from Ayodhya to my ashram to kill the Rakshasas that were disturbing my sacrifice. On the way, they killed the she-demon Tataka. And then, at Siddhashrama, Rama hurled Maricha 100 yojanas into the sea and killed Subahu. Before arriving at Mithila, Rama freed Ahalya from her husband's curse and received the worship of Gautama Rishi. Later, when everyone was comfortably seated, Shatananda, the chief priest of Maharaj Janaka and eldest son of Gautama Rishi, requested Vishwamitra to recount in detail the story of how his mother had regained her original form at the sight of Lord Rama. The rishi then happily related the entire incident. Thereafter, Shatananda reciprocated by narrating the glorious history of Vishwamitra. Vishwamitra was born as the son of Gadhi and formerly ruled his kingdom as a righteous Kshatriya. Once, taking an Akshohini of soldiers with him, Vishwamitra began to travel over the earth. In due course, he came upon the hermitage of the great Brahmarshi Vasishta. Entering the beautiful hermitage, which was inhabited by many sages, he bowed respectfully before Vasishta. The rishi received Vishwamitra cordially, and the two became engaged in friendly conversation. Vasishta said, "My dear king, please remain here for a few days as my guest, so that I may entertain you in a manner befitting your position." Vishwamitra humbly replied, "I am already fully satisfied with your kind reception. I ask only for your permission to leave." Vasishta, however, repeatedly insisted that Vishwamitra and his men remain. Finally, Vishwamitra relented. This being settled, Vasishta brought his Kamadhenu cow named Sabal before Vishwamitra and ordered her to produce a sumptuous royal feast. Being so commanded, the celestial cow immediately brought forth a huge quantity of seemingly unlimited varieties of food and drink, all arranged on sparkling silver platters. Vishwamitra and his men then feasted to their full satisfaction. However, before long, Vishwamitra began to feel envious of Vasishta, wishing he had the celestial cow for himself. As the pangs of greed surfaced, Vishwamitra told Vasishta, "I must have this wonderful cow of yours at all costs. Please give her to me, and I will reward you appropriately." Vishwamitra offered the sage hundreds of thousands of cows, gold, unlimited jewels, and more. Regardless, Vasishta refused to give up his celestial cow, saying, "I am very sorry, but I shall never be able to part with this Kamadhenu, even in exchange for 1 billion cows. This wish-fulfilling cow is inseparable from me, for I need her to supply all the ingredients for my sacrificial performances." Vishwamitra then replied, "The cow should rightfully belong to me, for the king is meant to possess the very best of everything." Because Vasishta's refusal only fanned the flames of Vishwamitra's desire, the king proceeded to offer the sage more and more. Regardless, Vasishta refused to part with his cow. Finally, out of frustration and anger, Vishwamitra grabbed the cow and began dragging her out of the ashram. At this, the Kamadhenu cried out pitifully, imploring Vasishta, "O Rishi, why are you allowing me to be taken away like this? Although I have served you faithfully, are you now going to desert me?" Sabal freed herself from the hundreds of men assisting Vishwamitra in dragging her away. As she fled back to the ashrama, Vasishta replied, "My dear Sabal, I am certainly not abandoning you. However, my power is not equal to the king's. I am helpless to rescue you." Sabal replied, "Dear Rishi, the king's material strength is insignificant in comparison to your spiritual strength. If you allow me to do so, I will utilize your superior energy to vanquish Vishwamitra's army myself." When Vasishta gave consent, Sabal proceeded to create innumerable fierce warriors from her body that began to consume Vishwamitra's army. However, the powerful king destroyed them all. Moreover, his Kshatriya spirit bristling, he challenged Sabal to create more soldiers if she desired to continue fighting. Sabal then proceeded to produce more, fiercer warriors that sprang from her udders, genitals, anus, and other body parts. These superior soldiers completely vanquished Vishwamitra's army. Seeing this, Vishwamitra's 100 sons angrily rushed at Vasishta. The Brahmarshi reduced them to a mere pile of ashes simply by uttering a mighty roar. Having thus lost not only his entire army but his sons as well, Vishwamitra departed, pale and dejected. Vishwamitra ordered his only remaining son to rule the kingdom and retired to the forest to perform austerities, hoping to please Lord Shiva. After some time, Lord Shiva became satisfied with Vishwamitra's austerities and appeared before the king to reward him. The delighted Vishwamitra expressed his desire to possess the knowledge of all celestial weapons. Lord Shiva, known as Ashutosh, because he is easily pleased, awarded Vishwamitra his desired benediction. Thus, Vishwamitra, who was already too proud, became exceedingly puffed up after receiving the celestial weapons, thinking his prowess to be invincible. Vishwamitra went directly to the ashram of Vasishta and began showering down his weapons so fiercely that it appeared that the ashram was on the verge of annihilation. All the sages residing there began to flee in terror, despite Vasishta's assurances. Indeed, in a short time, the area appeared desolate. Picking up his Brahminical rod, Vasishta addressed Vishwamitra as follows: "Because of your rash act of aggression, I shall now cut down your false pride and show you the futility of your so-called prowess." Vasishta held out his Brahminical rod and neutralized all of Vishwamitra's weapons. Vishwamitra then resorted to hurling his remaining celestial weapons. When this too failed, he prepared to release the ultimate weapon, Brahmastra. From above, the demigods witnessed the spectacular duel. When Vishwamitra invoked the terrible Brahmastra, they became wonderstruck and fearful. However, after Vishwamitra released the Brahmastra, Vasishta countered it by assuming an awesome form of gigantic proportions, with flames blazing forth from every pore of his body, neutralizing the energy of the Brahmastra. The tremendous form exhibited by Vasishta stunned everyone who witnessed it. Indeed, after seeing the Rishi's great prowess, the sages began to offer Vasishta prayers. With the Brahmastra weapon countered, Vasishta again assumed his normal form. In the meantime, Vishwamitra desisted from battle, departed, condemning the meager powers of the Kshatriyas. Understanding Brahminical power to be superior, Vishwamitra became determined to become a Brahmarshi like Vasishta. He then went into seclusion with his wife and began to execute severe penances. After 1,000 years, Lord Brahma appeared before Vishwamitra and formally conferred upon him the status of Rajarshi as a reward. However, as Lord Brahma departed, Vishwamitra hung his head in shame over the meagerness of his achievement. Remaining determined to achieve the status of a Brahmarshi and nothing less, Vishwamitra again resumed his severe austerities. So, Rajarshi wasn't enough. He had to become a Brahmarshi. During this same time, there was a king in the line of Ikshvaku named Trishanku, who ruled from his capital, Ayodhya. Desiring to perform a sacrifice that would enable him to ascend to heaven in his human body without changing bodies, he requested Vasishta to become his priest. Vasishta, however, refused, claiming it would be impossible to perform such a sacrifice. Afterwards, Trishanku approached Vasishta's 100 sons, who were engaged in performing sacrifices, and asked them to assist him in the performance of his sacrifice. However, when they learned of their father's refusal, they angrily chastised him for attempting to solicit their help after being turned down by his guru. Hearing their criticism, Trishanku replied, "If you are not willing to help me, I will seek the assistance of others more magnanimous." Upon hearing Trishanku's impudent statement, the rishis became furious and cursed Trishanku to become a Chandala. Soon thereafter, Trishanku's golden complexion turned black, his garments became old and soiled, his long lustrous hair began to fall out, his cosmetics turned to ashes, his gold ornaments turned to iron, and his garlands transformed into flowers from a crematorium. When Trishanku's ministers witnessed this transformation, they immediately abandoned him as untouchable. Having become a Chandala, bereft of his former position, Trishanku went to see Vishwamitra, who was engaged in performing austerities. Vishwamitra welcomed Trishanku with compassion, hearing from him how he had been cursed by the sons of Vasishta. When Trishanku begged Vishwamitra for help, the rishi assured him of shelter and promised to provide him with priests that would assist him in the performance of his sacrifice. Thereafter, Vishwamitra ordered his sons to petition all the priests and qualified brahmanas to assist him, asking only for the names of those who refused. Thus, many brahmanas from kingdoms across the earth came to his ashram. Only Vasishta and his sons and the rishi Mahadaya refused to participate, saying, "What Brahmin or demigod would be willing to accept an offering from the hands of a Kshatriya, what to speak of a Chandal?" When Vishwamitra heard these harsh, insulting words, he immediately uttered the following curse: "May the wretched sons of Vasishta be reduced to ashes and sent to the abode of Yamaraj this very day. Thereafter let them take 700 births as Chandalas, and may that fool Mahadeva become a Nishada. The curses quickly took effect, and Vishwamitra was able to perceive the results by dint of his mystic vision. Vishwamitra then requested the Brahmanas to present to perform Trishanku's sacrifice. Simply out of fear of being cursed, they complied and started the sacrifice. When Vishwamitra invited the demigods to attend and accept their share of the offerings, they desisted. This made Vishwamitra very angry, and he declared to Trishanku that he would elevate him to heaven by his own prowess. Indeed, as soon as Vishwamitra made the vow, Trishanku began rising to heaven in his selfsame body. When King Indra saw Trishanku approaching the heaven without having earned sufficient pious merit, and after having disobeyed his guru, Vasishta, Indra forced Trishanku to fall headfirst back toward earth. While thus falling, Trishanku called out helplessly to Vishwamitra to rescue him. Vishwamitra not only stopped Trishanku's fall, but also created a replica planetary system, complete with imitation demigods, for Trishanku to reside in. The demigods, however, were outraged by this wonderful feat. Approaching Vishwamitra, they said, "Give up your efforts to help Trishanku. He lacks the necessary qualifications for residing in the heavenly planets." Vishwamitra, however, insisted on keeping his promise. He declared, "I will never go back on my promise to send Trishanku to the heavenly planets without a change of body. Therefore, let it be ordained that my newly created heaven be accepted by you and remain for the duration of the universe." In the end, the demigods relented, and thus Trishanku remained head downwards in space. By the mercy of Vishwamitra, he enjoys heavenly bliss while shining brightly among the stars. Vishwamitra then returned to executing austerities, determined to become a Brahmarshi like Vasishta. Then, after a long time had passed, a beautiful Apsara named Janaka came to bathe at Pushkara Lake, where Vishwamitra was conducting his austerities. Seeing her, Vishwamitra became overwhelmed by lust. Eager to enjoy sex, Vishwamitra employed her to remain with him at his ashrama. Janaka happily consented, and thus they passed 10 years together, enjoying each other while lost to the pleasures of sensual enjoyment. Finally, Vishwamitra came to his senses and felt great disgust. He thought to himself, "I have foolishly wasted 10 years, merged in the so-called enjoyment of sense gratification. Now I can understand that Janaka was sent here by the demigods simply to steal my accumulated ascetic merit. By becoming a slave to lust, I have neglected all my austerities. Thus I have fallen down from my exalted position." Vishwamitra dismissed the fearful Janaka and then went to the northern side of the Himalayas, determined to remain celibate from then on. When Vishwamitra again resumed his austerities, the demigods grew increasingly fearful and approached Lord Brahma, begging him to award Vishwamitra the status of Maharshi. Lord Brahma agreed, but when he appeared before Vishwamitra, Vishwamitra replied that he would not be satisfied with anything less than the status of a Brahmarshi. Thus Lord Brahma explained, "You have not yet fully controlled your senses. Therefore, you will have to practice more austerities before achieving your goal, your desired goal." After Lord Brahma departed, Vishwamitra resumed his austerities, standing with arms upraised and subsisting on air alone for 1,000 years. Thus, Indra and the other demigods again became fearful and devised yet another plan to thwart Vishwamitra. Indra requested the lovely Apsara named Rambha to allure Vishwamitra away from his practice of austerities. Rambha, trembling with fear, declined, saying that she feared Vishwamitra's curse. Indra, however, assured her by saying, "Dear girl, please do not be afraid, for you shall surely succeed. It is springtime, and Cupid shall accompany you. I shall also go disguised as sweet singing cuckoo. Do not worry. Your beauty is irresistible. Vishwamitra will become a toy in your hands." Rambha finally agreed, and thereafter she appeared before Vishwamitra in a most pleasing manner, displaying her various feminine allurements. At first, Vishwamitra was pleased to see her, thinking she had come of her own accord. However, after a moment's consideration, Vishwamitra realized that her appearance was simply another trick to thwart him from his practice. Flaring with anger, Vishwamitra roared, "You foolish woman! You knew I was performing austerities for the purpose of controlling my senses. Still you dare to persist, trying to seduce me. For this you will have to stand as a stone statue for 10,000 years, or until the Rishi Vasishta delivers you." Rambha immediately turned into stone, while Indra and Cupid fearfully fled from the scene. However, after cursing the Apsara, Vishwamitra became morose, realizing that he had fallen victim to uncontrolled anger, thus diminishing his accumulated stock of ascetic merit. Vishwamitra then vowed to never again become angry. "I will not breathe, utter a word, or eat a morsel of food or drink until I achieve the status of Brahmarshi." Vishwamitra then resumed his austerities. However, after fasting for 1,000 years, he decided to eat something. Just as Vishwamitra was about to take his first bite, King Indra appeared before him in the dress of a Brahmana and begged for all his food. Without remorse or anger, Vishwamitra humbly gave all he had planned to eat to the Brahmana and went back to performing his austerities for another 1,000 years. Vishwamitra's powerful austerities began to heat up the entire universe, and smoke began to emanate from his head. Feeling great distress, the demigods again approached Lord Brahma to appease Vishwamitra. At that time, Lord Brahma, along with the demigods, went to Vishwamitra and awarded him the status of Brahmarshi, just to persuade him to desist in his austerities. Vishwamitra became very satisfied at heart. However, he further insisted, "It is not enough for you to award me the status of Brahmarshi. I must also be accepted as such by the other Brahmarshis, especially Vasishta." Thus, at the request of the demigods, Vasishta went to Vishwamitra and agreed to recognize him as a Brahmarshi. In turn, Vishwamitra also offered great respect to Vasishta. Their long-standing enmity was soon forgotten, and they became friends. The next morning, Maharaj Janaka called for Vishwamitra, Rama, and Lakshmana. After respectfully greeting them, he said, "I know that such great personalities would not come here without some grave purpose. Therefore, please inform me what service I may offer you." Vishwamitra smilingly replied, "Rama and Lakshmana have come here because they are eager to see the wonderful bow you keep and have worshipped for so long." Maharaj Janaka then explained, "This bow was used by Lord Shiva in a bygone age to disrupt the sacrifice of his father-in-law Daksha. Being denied his sacrificial share, Lord Shiva angrily picked up this bow and threatened to annihilate the demigods. Coming to their senses, the demigods were able to pacify Lord Shiva. In turn, he handed over his bow to them. The demigods later entrusted the bow to Devavrata, the descendant of Maharaj Nimi, my forefather. After describing the history of Lord Shiva's bow, Maharaj Janaka then related another interesting story. "Once upon a time, as I was leveling the sacrificial arena with a golden plow, much to my astonishment, I happened to uncover a baby girl. I named her Sita, furrow, and raised her as my own daughter. Sita quickly grew up, and when she attained maturity, many eligible princes came calling, hoping to win her hand in marriage. Since my daughter was not an ordinary being, I explained to the princes that to win her hand in marriage, they must possess great valor. Then I brought forth the bow of Lord Shiva and asked them to string it. However, none could even lift or hold it, what to speak of bending or stringing it. Most of the princes left, feeling insulted, and then banded together to attack Mithila. A fierce battle raged for 12 months. Finally, as my army weakened, I prayed to the demigods for assistance. In answer to my plea, the celestials mercifully sent an army, and simply by seeing them, my enemies fled in fear. Since Rama is eager to see the bow of Lord Shiva, I will bring it before him to examine. If Rama is able to string this wonderful bow, then I will gladly give him my beautiful daughter Sita." Soon, 500 strong men pulled the immense bow, which was encased in a chest and mounted on a cart with 8 wheels. Vishwamitra invited Rama to open the chest, while thousands of people gathered to watch. As Rama gazed with admiration at the bow, Maharaj Janaka warned, "Even great demigods, demons, rakshasas, yakshas, gandharvas, and nagas have failed to even bend this mighty bow. How then will a mere mortal succeed in stringing it?" Nevertheless, Rama sportingly placed his left hand upon the middle of the bow. Then, in the presence of the huge crowd, he effortlessly lifted the bow out of its case, holding the bow aloft. Rama strung the bow in an instant, and bending it with great force, snapped it in the middle, just as a baby elephant breaks a stick of sugarcane. The thunderous cracking sound produced was like a mountain bursting apart, and caused all but Vishwamitra, Janaka, Rama, and Lakshmana to fall to the ground. Thus, with great pleasure, Maharaj Janaka requested Vishwamitra to send messengers to Ayodhya, inviting King Dasharath to attend the marriage of Rama and Sita. When the messengers arrived 3 days later at the court of Maharaj Dasharath, they related the glorious event of Rama's breaking the bow and winning Sita's hand in marriage. Hearing this, Maharaj Dasharath became overjoyed. Then, after consulting with Vasishta and Vamadev, Maharaj Dasharath decided that they should all depart for Mithila the following day. Next morning, Maharaj Dasharath started out, keeping his family priest in front and taking his army and a great quantity of wealth. After traveling for 4 days, the party reached the outskirts of Mithila. Seeing his approach, King Janaka came out to meet Maharaj Dasharath, giving him a royal reception. Afterward, when Maharaj Dasharath had met with his sons, it was fixed that the preliminary marriage rituals would begin at an auspicious moment the next day. The next morning, everyone assembled. Before the wedding ceremonies commenced, Maharaj Dasharath requested King Janaka to hear of his royal lineage from Vasishta. Being so requested, the great sage Vasishta narrated the history of the Raghu dynasty. Marichi was the direct son of Lord Brahma, and Marichi's son was Kashyapa. From Kashyapa was born Vivasvan, the sun god, and Vivasvan's son was Manu. The son of Vaivasvata Manu was Ikshvaku, who was the first ruler of Ayodhya. Many generations later, in the Ikshvaku line came Bharata, whose son Asita was conquered by his enemies, the Haihayas, Talajanghas, and Shashabindus. Being defeated, Asita decided to retire to the Himalayas along with his 2 wives. When Asita passed away, one of the widows, named Kalindi, was pregnant. The other widow became envious of her and mixed poison in with Kalindi's food, desiring to kill the child within her womb. When Kalindi began to suffer the effects of the poison, the great Rishi Chavana happened to arrive at that spot. Kalindi tearfully sought his blessings so that her child might live. The Rishi assured her that a son would be born along with the excreted poison. Because of these unusual circumstances, Kalindi's son was named Sagara, or one who is born along with poison. Later on, in the line of Ikshvaku, the great-grandson of Maharaj Bhagirath, named Pravridha, was cursed by Vasishta to become a Rakshasa, and thus he came to be known as Kalmashapad. There were many great kings who descended from Ikshvaku, such as Ambarish, Nahusha, Yayati, Nabhaga, and Aja, the father of Maharaj Dasharath. After describing their histories, as well as many others, Vasishta formally requested King Janaka to give away his 2 daughters, Sita and Urmila, in charity to Rama and Lakshmana. Janaka Maharaj then described his own genealogy, beginning with King Nimi, and concluding with his own father, Hrasvaroma. The king then happily concluded the solemn agreement, giving away his daughters to the son of Maharaj Dasharath. First, Janaka requested Dasharath to have the Samarvatana ceremony performed for Rama and Lakshmana. This entails shaving the head and underarms when a student returns home from the Gurukula. Then the fire sacrifice was fixed for 3 days later and at an auspicious time. Vasishta requested that the 2 daughters of King Janaka's younger brother, Kushatwaj, be given in charity to Bharata and Shatrugna. Janaka agreed, and when the Samavartana ceremony was performed, Maharaj Dasharath gave away 100,000 cows in charity to the Brahmanas for each of his 4 sons. Thereafter, at the auspicious hour known as Vijaya, on the day chosen for the marriage, Vasishta approached Maharaj Janaka and said, "O king, the ruler of Kosala and his 4 daughters wait outside for he who shall give away his daughters. Let the auspicious wedding sacrifice now begin without delay. Thereafter, Maharaj Dasharath escorted his 4 sons into the sacrificial arena, while Vasishtha Muni prepared the sacred altar, decorating it with sandalwood paste, flowers, potted plants, bowls filled with scented water, grains, incense, and pots of turmeric, along with other auspicious articles. Then, when all was ready, Vasishtha lit a sacrificial fire and began offering oblations, while other brahmanas chanted Vedic mantras. King Janaka then escorted Sita into the sacrificial arena and seated her next to Rama. With a voice trembling with emotion, Janaka said, "O noble prince, this is my daughter Sita. Please take her hand and accept her as your lifelong partner. She is a reservoir of all auspicious qualities, and she will forever be devoted to you as faithfully as your own shadow." Then, as Gandharvas sang and Apsaras danced with joy, amid showers of flowers from heaven and the vibration of celestial drums, King Janaka joined the hand of the goddess of fortune, Sita, with the hand of the Supreme Lord Rama. Then King Janaka placed the hand of Urmila into Lakshmana's hand, then Mandavi's hand into Bharata's, and finally Shrutakirti's hand into Shatrughna's. The 4 brothers then circumambulated the sacrificial fire 3 times while clasping the hands of their newly wedded wives. Afterwards, they circumambulated King Janaka and the great rishis. Upon gaining Sita, the embodiment of all loveliness and virtue, Rama felt unlimited satisfaction and happiness. Similarly, Sita felt unprecedented bliss upon achieving her beloved Rama, the lord of her heart and the emblem of goodness, chivalry, intelligence, and handsomeness. Sita and Rama were equally endowed with transcendental qualities of form, beauty, behavior, age, and nature. Dedicating their hearts to each other, Sita and Rama shone resplendently, just as Lord Vishnu shines in the company of his divine consort, Lakshmi. Even today, opulent marriage festivals are enjoyed universally. The Supreme Lord Rama himself has kindly shown us that a man and woman can enjoy a successful marriage by combining to follow religious principles. Human beings should not mate simply out of sex impulse like cats and dogs, for the way of the beasts is characterized by fear, suffering, and rebirth. Therefore, every civilized society has some systematic arrangement for married life according to religious codes aimed at bringing peace and, in the best of societies, Krishna-conscious living. Eternally related as husband and wife, Rama and Sita are inseparable. Materialists sometimes want to worship and possess the goddess of fortune without Lord Rama, but this is never possible. Without Rama, Sita turns into Durga, the material energy personified, and to embrace her is to embrace death. However, if we concentrate on pleasing Lord Rama or Lord Krishna, the goddess of fortune will automatically bestow all her blessings upon us. The secret of successful living, including family affairs, is to put the Lord in the center of our life and make his service the goal of our endeavors. After the day's festivities were concluded, the marriage party retired for the night. The next morning, Vishwamitra left Mithila for the Himalayas, and later that day, Maharaj Dasharath departed with his 4 sons and their wives after receiving a large dowry from King Janaka. On the way back to Ayodhya, Maharaj Dasharath observed the inauspicious sign of numerous fearful birds screeching overhead. At the same time, he saw the auspicious sign of deer crossing his path from left to right. Fearing some impending danger, the king inquired from Vasishtha for an explanation. The rishi replied, "Screaming birds indicate some imminent danger. However, the deer crossing from left to right indicate there is no need to worry on that account." While Maharaj Dasharath and his priest were thus discussing the matter, a fierce wind began blowing, shaking the very earth and knocking down many tall trees. Dust rose up and began to cover everything from all directions. It became so dark that nearly everyone except Maharaj Dasharath and his sons and Vasishtha and the other rishis became bewildered and panic-stricken. Suddenly, the famous and terrible warrior Parashurama appeared with matted hair, an axe on his right shoulder, a bow on his left, and a powerful arrow in his hands. The rishis were surprised to see Parashurama in this ferocious aspect, since previously, after annihilating the Kshatriya community 21 times, he had vowed to give up his anger and remain fixed in the execution of austerities. As the rishis were wondering why he had again become moved to anger, the son of Jamadagni addressed Lord Rama as follows: "You have certainly performed a heroic feat by breaking the bow of Lord Shiva. However, I am carrying an even greater bow, that of Lord Vishnu. If you consider yourself a great hero, then take this bow and string it. If you are able to draw the arrow back to full length, I shall consider you a fit person to fight with." Hearing Parashurama's challenge, Maharaj Dasharath became overwhelmed with grief, afraid to lose his beloved son. With a trembling voice, the king pleaded, "O best of the rishis, Parashurama, please desist from your aggressive spirit. I beg to remind you of your vow to give up fighting. After handing over the earth to Kashyapa, you retired to Mount Mahendra to perform austerities." Parashurama, however, ignored Dasharath and continued to address Rama, saying, "Both Lord Shiva's bow and this bow of Lord Vishnu were constructed by Vishwakarma. Lord Shiva was given one of the bows to kill Triparasura." One day after Lord Shiva killed the demon, the demigods went to Lord Brahma and curiously inquired, "Who is more powerful, Lord Shiva or Lord Vishnu?" To resolve their doubt, Lord Brahma arranged to create some conflict between the two. As a result, a fierce battle ensued. During the fight, Lord Vishnu cut off Lord Shiva's bowstring, and then, simply by releasing a tumultuous roar, he stunned Lord Shiva's senses. At the behest of the demigods, the fighting was then stopped. Everyone who witnessed the duel concluded that Lord Vishnu is superior to Lord Shiva in all respects. Lord Shiva, however, felt bitter because of his defeat and was insulted by the verdict of the demigods. Thus, in gloom and disgust, he gave away his bow to Devarata, a king in the line of Ikshvaku. Lord Vishnu gave away his bow to the great sage Richika, who later gave it to his son Jamadagni. However, my father never used that bow, for he had vowed not to retaliate against any wrong done to him. Thereafter, I received the bow from him, and after killing the Kshatriyas 21 times as revenge for Kartavir Arjuna's slaying my father, I became the sole ruler of the earth. When Kashyapa performed a great sacrifice so that I could make atonement for the killing of Kshatriyas, I gave him the earth as his priestly reward and then retired to Mount Mahendra. While there, I acquired great prowess by performing severe austerities. However, when I heard that you had broken the bow of Lord Shiva, I felt compelled to come and challenge you. If you consider yourself a great hero, then take this bow and see if you are worthy of fighting with me. Without speaking, Rama accepted Parashurama's challenge by quickly snatching his bow and arrow from his hands, took with it his long-acquired ascetic prowess. Then, after effortlessly stringing the bow before the awestruck Parashurama, Rama drew the arrow back to its full length. Rama then declared, "Because you are a Brahmana and related to Vishwamitra, I shall not slay you. However, so that my taking up this arrow may not go in vain and your challenge may be properly answered, I will use it to destroy the attainment of heaven which you earned as a result of your penances." The demigods and celestial rishis assembled in the sky to witness Rama's shooting of the arrow. Parashurama had already been rendered impotent by Rama, and all he could do was gaze at the Lord with wide open eyes. Finally, as Rama continued to keep the arrow pulled back to his ear, Parashurama said in a subdued voice, "After I gave away the earth to Kashyapa, he ordered me not to reside here again. For this reason, I must leave before night falls. Although my access to heaven has been taken away, I beg you to at least allow me to turn to Mount Mahendra so that I may continue my austerities. O Rama, I can now understand that you are Lord Vishnu himself. Thus, I am not ashamed at having met defeat at your hands." Rama silently accepted Parashurama's request and then released the mighty arrow, thus destroying the son of Jamadagni's eligibility for heavenly elevation. Thereafter, Parashurama returned to Mount Mahendra. As soon as he departed, the darkness previously created completely dissipated. From their position in the sky, the demigods glorified Lord Rama with great enthusiasm and showered him with fragrant flowers. Lord Rama then presented the bow of Lord Vishnu to Varuna, and the party thus continued on its way. Upon returning home, The 4 sons of Maharaj Dasharath began living happily with their wives. After some time, King Yudhajit, the son of Kaikei and maternal uncle of Bharata and Shatrughna, came to Ayodhya and invited his nephews to come and stay with him. After his 2 brothers departed for the Kaikei kingdom, Rama began to serving his father and 3 mothers with great care. Rama also carried out the state of administrative functions so honestly and conscientiously that all the citizens came to love him dearly. Sita and Rama's natural attachment for each other grew day by day. They became completely dedicated to one another, being bound by each other's beauty and good qualities. In truth, Sita was beauty incarnate, being the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, herself. Within her mind, Sita could vividly read everything in the innermost core of Rama's heart. Being always determined to please her husband and acting as the emblem of womanly gentleness and chastity, Sita was soon able to bring the heart of Lord Rama under her control. Monisha, how long does this go to 9 or?
Prabhu, can you repeat the question?
How long shall I keep reading? I think I've finished a chapter now. And I start the Ayodhya.
Yes, Prabhu, we go until 9:45, Prabhu. If you want to give a summary or anything, you can do. We read until 9:45.
9:45, okay. Ayodhya Kand. Bharata and Shatrughna remained with their maternal uncle Yudhajit for some time, being well entertained by him. Meanwhile, at Ayodhya, Rama became the pet son of Maharaj Dasharath and the beloved of all the citizens. Rama was Lord Vishnu himself, incarnated within human society for the purpose of killing the wicked Ravana. As the supreme personality of Godhead, Lord Rama exhibited himself as the reservoir of all good qualities. Rama's beautiful bodily features provided all who viewed him with full satisfaction of their eyes. Rama played the part of a courageous and heroic Kshatriya, yet he was self-controlled, self-satisfied, without malice, and gentle in word and deed. Rama did not take offense when criticized by others, and was pleased even by the smallest show of kindness. He was forgiving and always humble about his own position. Rama only embraced the association of persons who were pious and of superior wisdom. He was considerate and always the first to welcome guests. Rama firmly adhered to truth and honored the Brahmanas. He loved the citizens and they loved him. Rama always acted according to religious principles and was learned in all the scriptures. He epitomized youthful vigor and was a mature judge of character. Rama was always diligent in punishing wrongdoers and rewarding the virtuous. As a horseman and wielder of the bow, Rama excelled all others, and he was the greatest of the chariot warriors. Indeed, Rama was the lord of the 3 worlds and the controller of eternal time. He was unconquerable even by the greatest demigods and demons. Maharaj Dasharath had ruled his kingdom for 60,000 years. Now, having grown old and fatigued, he finally desired to retire from his royal duties to prepare himself for an exalted destination after quitting his body. However, Maharaj Dasharath called a meeting of his ministers. Maharaj Dasharath began to see various omens of foreboding evil. Thus, he anxiously desired to install Rama as the heir apparent as quickly as possible. For this purpose, Maharaj Dasharath called a meeting of his ministers, prominent citizens, and subordinate kings. However, in his haste, Maharaj Dasharath did not formally invite King Janaka or Kaikei, feeling confident of their support. Thereafter, when all were assembled, Maharaj Dasharath announced, "I have grown old and now desire to hand the royal throne over to my eldest son Rama, who has reached the age of 27. It is now the sacred month of Chaitra, and tomorrow the auspicious constellation Pushya will be ascending. Therefore, with your permission, I will direct that the ceremonies for installing Rama as the heir apparent begin tomorrow." The assembled ministers, kings, and citizens all applauded Dasharath's proposal. They then glorified Rama's incomparable virtues, equating him with Lord Vishnu himself. Thus, Maharaj Dasharath was both pleased and relieved. After everyone departed, he requested Vashishta Muni to immediately begin preparations for the installation ceremony. Vasishta then ordered the chief minister, Sumantra, to arrange for the city to be gorgeously decorated and make all other preparations so that the ceremonies could start early the next day. Maharaj Dasharath then summoned Rama to the royal assembly. Soon thereafter, Rama entered the royal assembly and came before his father. Approaching his father with folded hands, Rama fell flat at his feet, offering his respects. Maharaj Dasharath then picked up his son, and after tightly embracing him, said, "My dear Rama, I have grown old and weary and feel it is now time for me to retire. I have sufficiently enjoyed all manner of royal opulences. I have performed innumerable sacrifices, and I have distributed huge amounts of wealth to the Brahmanas. You, Rama, are my eldest and favorite son. Likewise, all the ministers and citizens love you dearly. Therefore, I have arranged that tomorrow you will be installed as the heir apparent to the royal throne." Hearing this, some of Rama's friends ran to Mother Kaushalya, hoping to be the first to deliver the wonderful news to her. Upon hearing the news, she became overjoyed and gave the bearers of the good tidings gold, jewels, and cows in charity. Thereafter, when Rama returned to his own palace, crowds of cheering citizens greeted him along the way. Meanwhile, Maharaj Dasharath entered his inner apartments to lie down for some rest. Just as the king was drifting off to sleep, however, he experienced a recurring ominous dream. Waking with a start, he immediately sent Sumantra to summon Rama. The king felt apprehensive that there might be some obstruction to his son's planned installation. Hearing that his father had again called him, Rama also felt a degree of apprehension. Making toward his father's palace with haste, Rama entered his father's room, inquiring what was needed of him. Dasharath embraced Rama and said, "My dear Rama, all of my desires in life have been fulfilled except to see you installed on the throne. Unfortunately, due to the influence of the sun, Mars, and Rahu, this is a very bad astrological period for me. Moreover, I've been experiencing disturbing dreams, prompting me to think that a great calamity awaits me. Therefore, I'm eager to expedite matters. I want the installation ceremonies to begin immediately, even without the presence of your brothers Bharata and Shatrughna. You and Sita should fast tonight for purification. Then tomorrow in the early morning, prepare yourself for the installation." Rama returned to his palace to inform Sita of the arrangements for the following day. Not finding her there, however, Rama went to the residence of his mother. When Rama entered Kaushalya's room, he saw her sitting with half-closed eyes and suspended breath, silently praying to her household deity, Lord Narayana, for Rama's good fortune. Kaushalya, who was being attended by Lakshmana and Sumitra, got up to greet her son, and Rama addressed her, saying, "O mother, father wishes to install me as the heir apparent to the royal throne." With tears in her eyes, Kaushalya replied, "My austerities have surely not been in vain. May you and Sita live long and happily together." Smiling, Rama returned to his brother Lakshmana and said, "My dear brother, you must rule the kingdom along with me, for you are just like my second self. Indeed, I could not even think of finding happiness in royal luxury, or even life itself, without you." Thereafter, Rama returned to his palace in a jubilant mood. Sita and Rama worshipped Lord Narayana together and then lay down to take rest for the night. Meanwhile, within the city, all the citizens were merrily engaged in preparing for the coming festivities. All the streets in Ayodhya were washed with perfumed water and scattered with fragrant flowers. Brilliant, colorful lights burned in every house and meeting place, turning night into day. The noisy crowd swelled like waves of the sea, and the numerous elephants, horses, and camels appeared to be like large aquatic animals within the ocean. At the time of Kaikei's marriage to Maharaj Dasharath, her father, Ashvapati, the king of Kaikei, had given her a hunchback maidservant named Manthara. Manthara was actually an apsara, deputed by the demigods to appear on the earth to assist in the killing of Ravana. The evening before Rama's planned installation, Manthara went onto the palace roof. From there, she could see how the entire city of Ayodhya was splendidly decorated, the streets crowded with citizens in a jubilant mood. Surprised at seeing this, Manthara approached Rama's former nurse and inquired, "What great occasion warrants such a celebration? Why do I see Kaushalya in such a joyful mood and giving lavish charity to the Brahmanas? The nurse happily replied, tomorrow, the constellation Pushya will be in the ascendant. Taking advantage of the auspicious time, Maharaj Dasharath will install Rama as his heir apparent to the royal throne. This unexpected news pierced the envious heart of Manthara. Suspecting foul play by the king, she suddenly became enraged and thus sought Kaikei. Surprised at finding her mistress peacefully lounging on the couch in her apartment, Manthara exclaimed, get up, you fool. Can't you see the disaster that is about to engulf you? Are you so deluded by your husband's sweet words that you do not realize what is happening before your eyes? Kaikei innocently replied that she could find no fault in her husband's plans. This, however, only further enraged Manthara. Having mastered the art of persuasive speech, Manthara then spoke to Kaikei in a way that eventually caused her to doubt her husband. Posing as her well-wisher, Manthara continued, surely you are aware of your husband's plans to install Rama as his successor to the throne. Can't you see how deceitfully your husband has acted? He has merely sent Bharata away so that he can secretly install his pet son Rama on the throne. Once Rama becomes emperor, your son will meet his ruin, and you will be plunged into an ocean of despair. Moreover, because I am dependent on you, your fortune is also mine. Please let me help you before it is too late. Please act quickly to save your own son, Bharata, and yourself. Kaikei was surprised to hear her maidservant speaking so boldly. She replied, I'm happy to know that Rama will be installed on the throne. As a reward for delivering this wonderful news, please take this jewel. Indeed, you may ask for anything you desire. Kaikei placed the priceless jewel in Manthara's hand. The maidservant threw it aside. Manthara indignantly replied, I am shocked to see that you can express joy on the eve of disaster. Passing over Bharata to choose Rama should be a great insult to you. You may imagine that you are Dasharath's favorite. However, in truth, it is Kaushalya whom he adores. Don't you feel humiliated? You imagine that you are happy, but it will be Kaushalya who prospers. Once Rama becomes king, you will be compelled to act as Kaushalya's maidservant, and Bharata will be forced to become Rama's slave. In this way, Kaikei's heart gradually became poisoned by Manthara's hateful words. Indeed, when her enviousness of Kaushalya was fully aroused, her face became flushed with anger. Thus Kaikei relented, saying, Manthara, perhaps you are right. Somehow Rama must be banished to the forest so that my own son can be installed on the throne. Please tell me how I might accomplish this. Manthara then related how Dasharath had formerly fought on the side of Indra against the demons, headed by Shambhara. Because Shambhara knew so many illusory tricks, the demigods were afraid to fight with him. Once, after the demons had severely routed the demigods, Dasharath led an attack on their capital city, Vijayanta. Although he fought heroically, Dasharath was critically wounded during the battle and fell unconscious. Kaikei then removed him from the battlefield and saved his life. Out of deep gratitude, Maharaj Dasharath offered Kaikei 2 boons. However, she replied she would ask for them when needed. Manthara then said, now is the time to ask for those promised boons. With one, you will ask that Bharata be installed to the throne. With the other, demand that Rama be banished to the forest for 14 years. Rama's absence will give Bharata the opportunity to establish his popularity among the citizens. Then his position as the rightful ruler will be secure. Then Manthara further instructed Kaikei, saying, go to the sulking chamber, and after throwing off your costly ornaments and royal dress, put on old dirty clothes and lie on the cold floor. When Maharaj Dasharath comes to see you, remain silent at first. However, do not worry. His attachment to you is so great, he will not be able to bear seeing you unhappy. He will do anything to pacify you. Regardless, keep your ambition firmly fixed within your mind. You will not settle for anything less than having your son installed on the throne. Do not allow him to pacify you with gold, jewels, or anything else. Simply remind him of the 2 boons he promised. When he consents to this, then you should demand that Bharata be installed immediately and Rama banished to the forest. Because her fickle heart had become completely under the sway of malice and greed, Kaikei was delighted with Manthara's plan. She assured the maidservant that she would follow her advice to the letter. Indeed, through her twisted association, Kaikei had become obsessed with the idea of making Bharata the emperor of the world. Like a madwoman, Kaikei glorified Manthara, considering her to be the cause of all good fortune. She said, "My dear Manthara, although hunchbacks are generally sinful, you are wise and honorable. I think your so-called deformed body is quite beautiful. Indeed, you stoop over like a lotus flower bending in the breeze. Thus your appearance is very charming. Moreover, your breasts are large and lovely, concealing your delicate navel as they bend low. Your hips are graceful and your thighs are smooth and shapely. Dressed in bright silk, you appear to shimmer, while the ankle bells that circle your soft feet tinkle melodiously. The entire science of diplomacy must be residing within your hump, which is as large as the hub of a chariot wheel. My dear Manthara, when Bharata is installed as heir apparent, I shall garland your hump with a chain of pure gold. When Rama is exiled to the forest, I shall smear your hump with sandalwood paste. O Manthara, I will reward you with exquisite dresses and ornaments, and make all the other hunchback women become your maidservants and massage your feet." Meanwhile, having completed all necessary arrangements for Rama's installation, Maharaj Dasharath returned to his palace, desiring to see Kaikei. Filled with longing for his youngest queen, Dasharath was surprised to find her absent when he entered her room. Thinking her to be nearby, the king called out her name. However, when there was no response, he became apprehensive, for she had never before left her apartment without notice. Finally, after inquiring from a servant, Maharaj Dasharath learned that Kaikei had entered the sulking chamber. He hastened there with an anxious heart. When the king entered the room, he was shocked to see Kaikei lying on the bare floor. With her ornaments and garlands scattered about, she looked like an apsara fallen from heaven. In the king's mind, the beautiful young Kaikei was dearer than life itself. Thus, seeing her in such a state caused him great pain and alarm. Falling to his knees, the king lovingly stroked her face and asked his beloved queen, "What is troubling you, my dear Kaikei? What is the cause of your despondency? Whatever it may be, please know that I am prepared to remedy it. Have I not been paying enough attention to you? Did you have an argument with one of your co-wives? Has someone done something to anger you? My dearest one, please know I am under your control. I could never avoid trying to please you. Please speak freely and tell me what troubles you. Let me dispel your sorrow as the rising sun evaporates the morning mist." Pierced by Cupid's shaft of love, Maharaj Dasharath was a slave to the urges of passion. Upon hearing the king's words, Kaikei felt confident that her goal would be achieved. After a brief silence, Kaikei replied, No one has insulted me or shown me any disrespect. My lord, I will tell you what is on my mind. However, you must first assure me that you will unhesitatingly accomplish what I desire." While resting her head upon his lap, Maharaj Dasharath tenderly smoothed Kaikei's disheveled hair and replied, "You know that I love you. I love no one more except Rama. I swear that I will execute whatever you order. Feel free to tell me what you want, and I will accomplish it without fail. Please know that I will always do whatever you want. Now tell me what is troubling you." After hearing his triple assurance, Kaikei was certain that her husband was completely under her thumb. Urged on by an inflamed desire born of partiality toward her son, the queen proclaimed the following terrible words: "May the 12 Adityas, the 11 Rudras, the 8 Vasus, and the twin Ashvinis bear witness. May the sun and moon, night and day, and the 4 directions also bear witness. May the Gandharvas, Rakshasas, Pitas, Putas, Pishachas, and all other living creatures bear witness now. My illustrious lord, the follower of Dharma and adherent to truth, has promised to fulfill my desire. Remember, my dear husband, the battle between the demigods and the demons when you were critically wounded and left for dead. Remember how I nursed you back to life. Because of this, you promised to award me 2 benedictions. O noble king, you must grant me these 2 boons today without fail. Otherwise, I shall give up my life from grief. Therefore, my request is this: let Bharata be installed as heir apparent to the royal throne, utilizing the very preparations you have made for Rama. That is my first wish. Second, I desire for Rama to depart for the Dandakaranya forest this day, to live in exile for the next 14 years, wearing only tree bark and deerskin. Hearing Kaikei's ultimatum, Maharaj Dasharath became stunned with bewilderment. Burning with distress, he wondered, what is happening to me? Am I perceiving a vision from a previous life? Perhaps I've gone completely mad. Thinking in this way, the king immediately became overwhelmed with grief. He lost consciousness and fainted onto the floor. Then, when he had recovered after a brief spell, the agonized Dasharath found the situation too painful to cope with, and again fell into a swoon. It was only after a long time that Dasharath regained full consciousness. Summoning his courage, he felt a burning rage swelling within his heart. With great agitation, Maharaj Dasharath rebuked Kaikei. You vicious woman, are you so perverse that you're determined to destroy my entire dynasty? What have I done to deserve this? What offense has Rama ever committed against you? Rama loves you as much as his own mother. Why are you so bent upon harming him? Everyone loves Rama more than life itself, and I also could not live without him. I could abandon my other 2 wives if need be, but I could never forsake Rama. His rage being vented, Maharaj Dasharath's mood suddenly changed. The king then humbly touched his head to Kaikei's feet and pleaded, my dear, beautiful queen, please give up your terrible determination. Rama is the embodiment of all virtues. He is kind, forgiving, truthful, gentle, fixed in his duty, and the well-wisher of everyone. Rama has always served you as lovingly as your son Bharata, if not more. If you insist, I will install Bharata as heir apparent to the throne. But I could never think of banishing Rama to the forest. How can you dare even consider harming Rama? Indeed, he is completely faultless and has never uttered an unkind word to you. My dear beloved one, have pity on me. Ask for any other benediction. I am ready to give you the entire earth, but not this. If I banish Rama, I will surely die. Please spare me from executing this most cruel and irreligious act. As Maharaj Dasharath spoke, he writhed in agony, wailing piteously. Although the king prayed for her mercy, Kaikei remained unmoved. Standing fast in her determination, she responded, how can you dare speak about Dharma while you are trying to rescind your promise of granting me these benedictions? You solemnly promised, and I shall not forget. Remember King Shiva, who gave his own flesh to the hawk just to fulfill his promise of protection to the pigeon. If you fail to keep your word, it will stain the reputation of your entire dynasty. Therefore, whatever the circumstance, you must fulfill your promise. As Kaikei spoke, her determination increased. Overwhelmed by anger and greed and giving up all sense of shame and decency, Kaikei said, O king, I know your true motive. Once Rama is installed as the heir apparent, it will be easier for you to push my son and me away. With this impediment removed, you will be free to enjoy your life fully with Kaushalya. However, I vow that if you do not keep your promise, I shall drink poison and die this very day. Then Kaikei remained silent as Maharaj Dasharath agonized over her words. Staring into space with unblinking eyes, the king again lost all equilibrium and fell to the ground, uttering, Rama, Rama. After some time, the king regained partial composure and asked his wife, Oh, misguided woman, from whom did you learn such shameful wickedness? Do you not know that even if Bharata were to be installed, he would not accept the kingdom without Rama? What will people think of me for performing such an ignoble act? Everyone will ridicule me, saying, There goes the lusty king who was so attached to his wife that he sent his beloved son into exile. How do you think there will be happiness under such conditions? Pausing in his speech, Maharaj Dasharath began wondering how Rama, who had always enjoyed the comforts of royal opulence, would be able to live in a harsh life in a forest. As his pain and anger increased with these thoughts, the king suddenly mocked, "O righteous queen, I wish you all success in ruling the kingdom after having rid yourself of all your relatives. Do not expect me to play a part in your sinister plans. I shall never grant your demands, never." Regardless, the king's bluster soon faded as helplessness welled up within him. He again implored his queen to retract her statements, saying, "Please take back all that you have said." Saying this, he again fainted. After Dasharath regained consciousness, he again rebuked Kaikei. Oh, how condemned women are! They are cruel, perverse, and selfish by nature. If not all women, then surely you. O mother of Bharata, your demands are evil and malicious. I will never grant them. You can scream as you like, take poison or threaten me, but I shall never banish Rama to the forest. Dasharath's eyes were red from weeping and his voice pitiful to hear. Yet Kaikei callously turned her head away. Again and again he begged her, but to no avail. The king prayed that the night would never pass, so that he would have to face the ordeal of banishing Rama to the forest the following day. However, King Dasharath finally realized that Kaikei was unwavering in her determination, and again fainted from hopelessness. While King Dasharath was arguing with Kaikei, Vasishtha Muni completed the preparations for the coronation ceremony. The moon, lord of the stars, had entered the lunar mansion of Pushya, and the sacred hour of installation had arrived. As Vasishtha Muni made his way through the streets to the king's palace, he saw that flags, festoons, and garlands decorated all the houses. Likewise, the streets, which had been sprinkled with scented water, were filled with throngs of people anxiously waiting Lord Rama's appearance. Passing through the joyous crowds, Vasishtha Muni, followed by the other sages, entered the palace grounds. They were beautifully decorated with garlands and reservoirs of flower, replete with lotus flowers, reservoirs of water, replete with lotus flowers, swans, and shade-giving flower trees. As Vasishtha Muni was about to enter the palace, he saw Sumantra, King Dasharath's chief minister, who had just returned. Please tell His Majesty that I have returned, Vasishtha told him. I have brought golden water pots filled with water from the sacred rivers, and a special seat of sacred wood has been made for Rama's use during the sacrifice. I have also brought various seeds, aromatic perfumes, and precious jewels for the coronation. I have collected honey, curd, roots, ghee, milk, spices, flowers, parched paddy grains, and blades of sacred grass, all to be used in the sacrifice. I have also brought 8 virgin girls and many excellent elephants, a splendid chariot drawn by 4 horses, and a special sword, a bow, a palanquin with bearers, an umbrella resembling the moon, a pair of chamara fans, a sacred bull, and a throne decorated with carved lions. Everything necessary for the sacrifice has been collected. Therefore, please ask the king to bring Rama so that the ceremony may begin as soon as the moon has fully entered the constellation Pushya. Entering the king's chambers, Sumantra soon reached the room where Dasharath and Kaikei were sitting. Not knowing what had taken place between the king and his wife, Sumantra was joyful. He was therefore quite surprised when the king, whose happiness had forever terminated, cried out, "Oh, Sumantra, you are cutting my heart to pieces," and fell unconscious to the floor. The king has not slept all night because of his joy over Rama's installation, Kaikei told him. Then the king regained consciousness and ordered Sumantra to summon Rama. At Rama's palace, Sumantra was quickly ushered into the presence of Sita and Rama. The Lord was garlanded with white lotus flowers, with golden necklaces covering his transcendental body. Being attended by servants who were fanning him with chamaras and offering him various gifts with great devotion, Rama appeared just like the Supreme Lord Vishnu, who in fact he was. Hearing the king's summons, Rama remarked to Sita, "My father must be calling me for some auspicious purpose concerning the installation ceremony." As Rama departed, Lakshmana was standing at the gate, awaiting for Rama with folded hands. Rama took his brother with him and then mounted his chariot, traveling through the streets of Ayodhya. Along the way, the citizens cheered, praising Rama to the accompaniment of musicians. Wherever he went, the people could not take their eyes away from him. Indeed, the natural characteristic of Lord Rama is that whoever looks upon him cannot bear to look away. Reaching the inner gates of his father's palace, Rama descended from his chariot and dismissed the citizens that had accompanied him. As he entered his father's room, Rama saw Maharaj Dasharath seated on a couch with Kaikei. The king's face was a withered mask of dejection and anxiety. As Rama approached, the king could only mutter, "Rama, Rama," as his eyes filled with tears, unable to look directly at his son. Seeing his father's distressed state, Rama's heart became filled with grief and apprehension. He wondered, "What has happened to make my father so dispirited? Why is he not happy to see me? Rama then inquired from Kaikei, what is the cause of my father's distress? Have I done something to offend him? The king, Kaikei began, is neither angry nor offended. He does, however, have something to tell you. He fears that by doing so, he will hurt you. Therefore, let me explain. Formerly, your father offered me 2 boons after I saved him in a precarious situation on the battlefield. However, due to unmanly weakness, he now hesitates to fulfill his promise. Therefore, Rama, you should protect your father's virtue by convincing him not to fall prey to dishonesty. O Rama, if you promise me that you are fully prepared to carry out the king's order, then I shall disclose to you the nature of the 2 boons I desire. Feeling deeply hurt, Rama replied, my dear mother, I am surprised that there is any doubt in your mind that I would unflinchingly carry out my father's wishes, even if it meant entering into fire. Please tell me what my father wants. Do not doubt that I will act accordingly. This is my solemn promise. Gaining Rama's assurance, the cruel Kaikei said, formerly, when your father was severely wounded in fighting the demon Shambhara, at the behest of the demigods, I carefully nursed him back to life. Feeling a deep sense of gratitude, the king begged me to accept 2 boons. I said that I would accept them later in a time of need. Now I wish to utilize those boons. First, I have requested your father to install Bharata as the heir apparent to the throne. Secondly, I have asked the king to banish you to the forest for 14 years, where you will live as an ascetic with matted hair and dress with tree bark and deerskin. It is your duty to ensure that your father does not go back on his word and thus tread the path of unrighteousness. Hearing her words, Rama did not become even slightly distressed or agitated. Without any indication of displeasure, he cheerfully replied, my dear mother, I shall immediately retire to the forest as you desire. Let messengers be sent at once to summon Bharata. I have no regrets. My only wish is that you and my father may always look upon me favorably. My dear mother, please do not harbor any ill feeling toward me. At this, Kaikei exclaimed with delight, it is settled. Send messengers to my brother's house so that my son may come here at once. As for you, Rama, I urge you to depart for the forest without delay. Do not worry about your father. For the moment he is bewildered, but at your departure he will come around. After your departure. Rama then said, my dear mother, it grieves me that my father has not ordered me himself, but I am ready to depart for the forest with your command alone. Hearing this conversation, Maharaj Dasharath could only mutter, how painful, how terrible. When Kaikei finished speaking, the king again fainted onto the floor. Then, as Rama gently lifted up his father, he told Kaikei, I do not want to live in this world as a slave to greed and passion. Like the rishis, I am devoted to righteousness. I would never give up the path of virtue for the sake of ruling a mere kingdom. Dear mother, there was no need in bothering my father. If you would simply have asked me directly, I would have unhesitatingly given you the kingdom and retired to the forest. Rama bowed to King Dasharath and Kaikei, and departed to tell his mother the news. Lakshmana, who had heard everything at the door, followed his elder brother. It was only with great effort that he managed to control his rage. As the 2 brothers left the palace, a pitiful wailing was heard from all who had found out about Rama's impending exile. When Maharaj Dasharath heard those cries of lamentation, he hid himself under his bedsheets in shame. When Rama entered Kaushalya's apartment, he was joyfully greeted and ushered into his mother's room. When he came in, she immediately embraced him, saying, I am so happy, Rama. Today you will become installed as successor to the throne. With great gentleness and humility, Rama replied, my dear mother, please do not allow yourself to be overcome by grief at what I must tell you. Because of 2 benedictions that my father formerly promised Kaikei, Bharata will be installed as the heir apparent to the throne, and this very day I shall leave Ayodhya, dwell in the forest for 14 years. Hearing this, Kaushalya immediately fainted to the floor. Then, after Rama tenderly lifted Kaushalya to her feet, she bitterly lamented, what greater misery could befall me than this? It would be better for me to have remained childless. Why has death not come to me instantly upon hearing of this calamity? My younger co-wives will surely despise me now. By hearing their taunts, my life will be made doubly miserable. Until then, Lakshmana had controlled his rage. However, no longer able to remain silent, he suddenly burst out, "Oh, Rama, our father has become senile and perverse, being overpowered by lust. Why, he has become a plaything in the hands of the wicked Kaikei. Why should we passively stand by and accept this? A father, a king, or a spiritual master who cannot distinguish between what should and should not be done must be rejected. Rama, you should take over the government immediately, before everyone hears of the king's decision to install Bharata. Besides, even if all the ministers and citizens have found out, if they are against your installation, I am prepared to annihilate the whole of Ayodhya if necessary. My dear mother, you should know that I at least am loyal to Rama. Indeed, I am ready to kill the foolish Dasharath if it is necessary to install Rama upon the throne." Kaushalya, however, did not care for the kingdom. She only feared separation from her beloved son. She said, "O Rama, please do not go into exile. It will be more virtuous for you to stay here and please your poor mother than to go to the forest at the command of your father. Rama, if you leave Ayodhya, then I shall fast to death, for life will become unbearable for me." Rama replied, "Mother, it is not possible for me to disobey my father. Therefore, you must give me your permission so that I may depart to the forest at once." The order of one's father can never be avoided. Just consider how Parashurama beheaded his own mother, Renuka, on the order of his father Jamadagni. Likewise, the sage Kandu killed a cow at his father's command. Therefore, I too must obey my father. Turning to Lakshmana, Rama said, "My dear brother, do not allow yourself to come under the sway of all-devouring wrath. Give up the idea of seizing the throne by force and accept the order of our father." Rama again addressed Kaushalya, "My dear mother, please do not torture yourself or talk of ending your life. After the term of my exile is over, I shall return to you. Therefore, please give me your blessing so that I may depart without unnecessary remorse." Kaushalya, however, could only cry in desperation. Then Rama became stern and said to Lakshmana, "You are both causing me more grief by opposing my desire to honor my father's command. I will not be swayed from my duty." Then, to pacify Lakshmana, Rama said, "My dear brother, as soon as Bharata is installed, all of this will be forgotten. Then you will be easily able to give up your grief. Do not blame Kaikei, for she is only an instrument in the hands of Providence, the real shaper of our destinies." Lakshmana refused to be pacified. He angrily retorted, "O Rama, it appears that you have become impotent, for you have given up your Kshatriya reliance on personal prowess and are surrendering to destiny. I am not such a eunuch, however, and shall subdue fate by my own power. I will install you on the royal throne this very day." Hearing this, Kaushalya could understand that nothing could deter Rama. She then pleaded, "O my son, if you are determined to execute your father's command, then please allow me to accompany you to the forest." Rama replied, "Dear mother, after being deceived by Kaikei and then deserted by you, my father would certainly give up his life. The foremost duty of a chaste and virtuous wife is to never leave her husband under any circumstance. He is her lord for as long as she lives. Regardless of how noble or religious a woman may be, she commits sin if she fails to serve her husband. A wife's duty is to please and obey her husband and no one else. This is the verdict of all the scriptures. Please then remain with my father and wait for me, for I shall return after 14 years without fail." Kaushalya gave up all hope of accompanying Rama and finally agreed to give him her blessings. After giving Rama permission to depart for the forest, Kaushalya induced the Brahmanas to perform sacrifices for her son's well-being. Kaushalya declared, "May you soon return so that my happiness will be restored. May righteousness be your protector. May the demigods protect you, and may the celestial weapons defend you. May heaven and earth, the air, the wind, the land and water, and all animate and inanimate objects, inanimate beings protect you. May day, time, and night, the sun and moon protect you. May you be happy, O Rama, for my blessing shall go with you." Sita had heard nothing of Rama's exile. She had been waiting for him in happy expectation for many hours. When Rama finally entered her room, Sita could immediately see that he was pale, perspiring, and greatly troubled. Rama was also not accompanied by his usual royal entourage. Sita inquired, "My lord, what is the matter?" Without hesitation, Rama replied, "My father has ordered me to leave the kingdom and to reside in the forest. Bharata is to be installed as the heir apparent to the royal throne. Utilizing two boons given her long ago by my father, Kaikei has asked that her son be installed while I am to be banished to the forest. My dear Sita, I have no choice other than to abide by my father's order. However, I want you to stay here. Go daily and offer your respects at the feet of my father, and follow Bharata's commands implicitly. My dearest, I have come here just to see you before departing for the forest." Hearing Rama's words, Sita grew increasingly agitated. With anger born of love, she replied, "O Rama, my husband, most excellent of men, what advice are you giving me? It is the duty of the wife to share the husband's destiny. I must accompany you to the forest." A father, mother, brother, son, and daughter-in-law all have their separate existence. A wife, however, has no choice but to follow her husband. I cannot take refuge in anyone else, not even myself. My husband is my only refuge. Therefore, I am determined to follow you. I shall walk behind you and eat only after you have eaten. I will never do anything to displease you, and I shall remain happy to gaze at the hills, lakes, and rivers. I will never become tired, for I will feel secure in your care. I would not want to live even in heaven if you were not there. O Rama, it is you alone that I love. Without you, I would surely die. Because of her frailty, Rama was not inclined to take Sita with him. Thus, in an attempt to discourage her, Rama said, "O delicate lady, one has to endure great discomfort while living in the forest. There are no soft beds to lie on, and one has to bear the onslaught of excessive heat, cold, and torrential rain. In the forest, one can only hope to eat fruits and roots. There is always danger from ferocious animals that stalk in search of prey. Considering these conditions, I could never allow you to accompany me to the forest." Rama's words of refusal made Sita tremble with fear at the prospect of separation from her lord. As pearl-like tears rolled down her cheeks like drops of water falling from a lotus leaf, Sita replied, "As long as I remain with you, any inconvenience or danger will be of no consequence. O Rama, without her husband, a wife cannot live. If you do not allow me to go with you, I shall give up my life by taking poison, entering fire, or drowning myself. Before my marriage, an astrologer predicted that I would have to spend part of my life in the forest. Therefore, my dear husband, I know that it is my destiny to accompany you. To be with you is heaven, and to live without you is hell. Therefore, you must take me with you." Rama remained reluctant to allow Sita to accompany him into exile. Sita felt as though she were falling into a great abyss of calamity. Thus, she became almost mad, fearing separation from her husband. Unable to tolerate Rama's stubbornness any longer, Sita began to chastise him. "My father made a big mistake in choosing you for a son-in-law. How can you think of deserting your wife who married you before puberty? Are you going to leave her unprotected and exposed to the stares of others? The citizens of Ayodhya are fools for declaring, 'Rama is as splendid as the sun, his glories are without equal.' I refuse to remain here alone while you go off to the forest. Either you take me with you, or I will take poison and die." Crying bitterly, her heart tormented with grief, Sita was on the verge of fainting. Seeing her pitiful condition was more than Rama could bear. His heart softened, and he took his chaste wife Sita in his arms. Rama then assured her that she could indeed accompany him. Footnote 5. Srila Prabhupada comments, in Vedic civilization, there are hundreds of similar examples of such renunciation on the part of queens and dedication to the husband. The goddess of fortune, Mother Sita, followed her husband Ramachandra when he went to the forest. Lord Ramachandra went to the forest in compliance with the order of his father, Maharaj Dasharath, but Mother Sita was not so ordered. Nonetheless, she voluntarily accepted the path of her husband. Such queens also instructed the general people by showing them how to become a chaste wife and follow the husband in every stage of life. When the husband is king, she sits beside him as the queen, and when he goes to the forest, she also follows, despite having to tolerate all kinds of difficulties in living in the forest. Dear Sita, Rama began, I only tried to dissuade you because I did not understand the true situation of your mind. O Sita, I could no more abandon you than a wise man could give up his sense of compassion. How could I ever rest peacefully, knowing that you were unhappy? Go then and give away in charity all your valuables, clothes, jewels, and whatever you possess to the Brahmanas. As Sita joyfully departed, Lakshmana, who was standing nearby, came forward and caught hold of Rama's lotus feet. With tear-filled eyes, Lakshmana pleaded, O Rama, please allow me also to accompany you into the forest. Hoping to discourage Lakshmana, Rama replied, My dear brother, you must remain here at Ayodhya to serve our two mothers, Kaushalya and Sumitra. Without your protection, they will be surely mistreated by Kaikei. To this, Lakshmana replied, Surely our brother Bharata will take care of everything. There is no need to be anxious for our mothers. O Rama, as you traverse the forest, I shall walk in front with my bow in hand, allowing you and the daughter of the king of Videha, Sita, to enjoy the scenic delights. I will also gather fruits and roots as you sleep and stand nearby to guard you. At last Rama agreed. He then instructed Lakshmana, You may certainly come, but first take leave of your mother. Afterward, bring the two mighty bows given by Varuna to Maharaj Janaka, the impenetrable armor, 2 inexhaustible quivers, and a pair of powerful swords. After paying your respects to Vasishtha, return here with the weapons, and we shall depart. Having fulfilled Rama's orders, Lakshmana returned. Rama then asked him to summon the foremost of the Brahmanas, so he could distribute all his possessions in charity. Soon thereafter, Suyagya, the son of Vasishtha, and the sons of Agastya and Vishwamitra arrived at the royal palace. After duly welcoming them, Rama instructed his dependents to look after their palaces in their absence. Rama then ordered his treasurer to bring forth all his wealth. Thereafter, a huge hill of gold and jewels was stacked high, along with other valuables such as clothing, chariots, and animals. In this way, Rama began to distribute his possessions. It happened that a Brahmana named Trijata resided in the forest near Ayodhya. Because of his extreme poverty, the Brahmana was very weak and frail. His wife pleaded with him to go to Ayodhya to ask for some charity from Rama. Thereafter, the Brahmana set out and happened to arrive just when Rama was distributing his wealth. When the Brahmana approached him and described his impoverished condition, Rama jokingly replied, Take your staff and throw it as far as you can. As many cows as that stick passes over, I shall give you. Trijata tightened his belt and then excitedly threw his staff into the air. To everyone's surprise, his staff soared all the way across the Sarayu and landed amongst a herd of thousands of cows who were grazing from the river's edge up to the point where his stick had landed. Rama then embraced the Brahmana, saying, Please do not be offended by my jest. I merely wish to see your exhibition of Brahminical prowess. After that, Rama gave away everything in his possession. He made sure that no Brahmana, relative, dependent, or beggar failed to receive charity on that day. Rama, Sita, and Lakshmana then proceeded on foot through the streets of Ayodhya toward the palace of Maharaj Dasharath. The citizens observing Rama traveled about in this fashion, some from their 7-story mansions and others in crowds on the street. All became greatly pained. They cried, Oh, how unfortunate that even common people are now able to see Sita, who formerly never appeared in public. We shall take our families to accompany Rama so that Ayodhya will become like an uninhabited forest, and the forest will become like a populous city. As Rama entered Kaikei's quarters, he saw Sumitra and asked the charioteer to announce his presence to the king. Upon hearing of Rama's arrival, Maharaj Dasharath ordered Sumitra to assemble his consorts so he could meet with his son in their presence. Shortly thereafter, 350 young maidservants came and surrounded Kaushalya. Then, when Rama, accompanied by Sita and Lakshmana, entered his father's room, King Dasharath ran to embrace him. Overwhelmed by grief, the king fell unconscious before reaching his beloved son. At that, Rama rushed forward, picking up his father in his arms, while all around the people cried in anguish. After being brought to his couch, Dasharath regained consciousness. Rama then said, "My dear father, I have come to bid you farewell. Please give me permission to depart for the forest with Sita and Lakshmana." Maharaj Dasharath urged, "Rama, please accept my advice. Take me captive at once, and then occupy the royal throne by force. No one can stop you." Rama replied, "Dear father, I have no desire to achieve sovereignty over the earth or royal opulence." Maharaj Dasharath then said, "You may leave with my blessings, but please stay here for just one day, so I may have the opportunity to see you." However, Rama replied, "I must leave immediately. It is my duty to fulfill your promise and do as Kaikei has ordered me. I must leave for the forest at once." Maharaj Dasharath then embraced Rama, and afterward he again fell unconscious. Sumantra, who was weeping profusely, also fell to the floor. Everyone except Kaikei cried aloud with grief. Sumantra had been the most intimate associate of the royal family. Thus, he, more than all others, suffered because of the calamity before them. Suddenly, Sumantra approached Kaikei and began chastising her harshly, saying, "O wicked woman, by sending away Rama, you will become the murderer of your own husband. Your selfish demands violate the religious principle that a kingdom be handed over to the eldest son. Indeed, you shall reap the bitter fruits of your evil deeds, for when Rama goes away, all the Brahmanas will follow him. Thus your kingdom will become devoid of auspiciousness. I will tell you something for your benefit. Once upon a time, your father, Kaikei, received a benediction from a rishi. It enabled him to understand all languages, even those of the animals. However, in giving the boon, the rishi made one condition. If Kaikei ever disclosed the meaning of any speech that he heard from an animal, he would die. Later, the king once happened to hear the shrill cry of a bird. Because he understood its meaning, he began to laugh heartily. However, the queen, your mother, imagined that the king was laughing at her. Therefore, she demanded to know what he found so amusing. The king then informed his queen of the rishi's benediction, warning her that he would die if he disclosed what the bird had said. The foolish queen was so stubborn and jealous, however, that she replied, "You can live or die. I do not care. I only insist that you tell me why you are laughing." The mortified king then went to the rishi who had given him the benediction, explaining his predicament. The rishi advised that he not disclose the bird's speech and that he should rebuke the queen for her impudence. Taking the rishi's words seriously, Maharaj Kaikei gathered his courage and chastised his wife severely. After that, he lived happily ever after. In the same way, Kaikei, you are acting impudently toward your husband. Admit your fault and give up your wicked plan. Kaikei, however, remained unmoved. So it's now 9:45. What happens now? Do we stop the reading?
Prabhu, do we have announcements and Guru Puja? If you want to sing Guru Puja, we can follow you, followed by the announcements.
I'll follow along.
Okay. Monisha, would you mind sharing the picture?
Yes, Mataji, I'm pulling it up. It's not coming up. One sec.
Okay, sure. Go ahead and sing it, Monisha.
Okay. Okay, let me just...
Thank you so much, Akruranatha Prabhu. It was so nice reading and totally immersed. Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. And you read so well. And so many points. I really liked how it was just so many things that came along Vishwamitra's way, that he had to overcome each and every obstacle to get that one title. And we get caught up in so many things like that and lose our focus. And yeah, thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Malini.
Thank you so much, Prabhu, for the wonderful reading. I really like the point where Lakshmana when he heard about when Lord Ram came to Kaushala and declared that he has to go to the forest. At that time, Lakshmana was saying so many things and saying, you don't have to follow before anything happens. Let's go ahead and make you the king. And so much so that he even rebuked Lord Ram, saying that, don't be a eunuch. I'm not a eunuch. And then I was just thinking, like, he was ready to do anything for Lord Ram, for his pleasure. So I really appreciated that point. Thank you, Prabhu, for reading.
Yeah, Krishna wants to make the pastime go. He wants to be subordinate to providence. But Balaram, he he's the master of providence after all. So he wanted to convince. Anyway, in this instance, Lakshmana wanted to convince Rama, why do you have to surrender to this? Of course, it's part of the Leela, and it's so nice to see how emotional the spiritual relationships are, that Lord Rama himself is God, but he's not just sitting and meditating like an ascetic, but he has these very emotional relationships with his devotees. And this is much more ecstatic. The spiritual emotions of exchanges of love are much more ecstatic than just the Brahmananda of being one with this spirit.
Prabhu, I had a question too. Is it okay if I ask?
Sure.
Prabhu, about the Brahmana who was poor when Lord Ram was giving away all his wealth. I forget his name. Trishanku, so I don't remember.
Yeah, I forget too.
Yeah, and Lord Ram actually asked him to throw his staff all the way, and as far as the staff would go, he would give that much amount of wealth. But then later he said, I just wanted to see your prowess. So as a Brahmana, so can you explain a little bit more about that pastime, Prabhu? What is the instruction?
Yeah, because the Brahmana was weak because he was so poor that he hadn't been eating and he'd been living so simply, then it wouldn't be expected that he could throw his staff very far. But because he was spiritually advanced, and he had to, he could only get as much cows as he threw his staff. So he was able to throw his staff very, very far and way over the river and actually over a big herd of cows. So then Rama knew he would be able to do that. And he said, I wasn't really teasing you by telling you had to throw the staff. I really just wanted to demonstrate the power of the holy Brahmanas.
So does it mean that he got that many cows until the...
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he got lots of cows. And then his wife, and they would be able to eat and be wealthy. And Rama was also giving so much to so many other worthy people. And that's the nature of charity, that you should find those who are worthy to give charity to. That's described in the 17th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, how charity can be in goodness, passion, or ignorance. So it should be given with great respect and humility to a worthy person in a proper time and place.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Akruranatha, Prabhu, can I ask a question?
Of course.
Prabhuji. So Prabhuji, so when we are hearing Ramayana and we read Ramayana, we see that Kaikei got influenced by Mandara and she spoke evil words. That's what the Ramayana says. And I was just wondering, so in Treta Yuga, can people be influenced by evil words and evil mindedness?
Yes. In Satya Yuga, the 4 pious qualities of truthfulness, compassion, cleanliness, and what's the other one? truthfulness, compassion.
Mercy?
What is it?
Is that mercy, Prabhu?
Mercy is compassion. So there's truthfulness, cleanliness, mercy, and austerity. So those qualities exist in Satya Yuga, and they're reduced 1/4 in Treta Yuga, and then reduced another 1/4 in Dwapara Yuga, and then in Kali Yuga, there's only one portion left, 1/4 left, and truthfulness is the last leg of Dharma that exists in Kali Yuga, but it's also being under attack. You can see how seriously people took their vows, right, and their promises, and then they were discussed. I thought what I was interested in the reading was how when people explain themselves and explain their deliberations on Dharma, they referred to historical instances that we can learn in the Puranas, and that's how these itihasas, also Mahabharata and Ramayana, can give people many examples of instances, so they can. This is the way lawyers have precedents, right? We say, well, then there was this other case where these were the facts, and the court decided that because of this consideration that happened. So this was like very much, for me, a legal discussion about should he obey Kaikei, and was Kaikei, for example, when Sumantra told her about her own father and how he had not obeyed his wife when she was moved by this mistaken desire to have him, even at the pain of death, to tell her what the bird had said. There were several times within the reading this morning where somebody said, "Oh, I remember that time when you did this, or when someone else did this, or Vasishtha did that, or whatever." But yes, so in Treta Yuga, there was still some, and we can see from the past time, it was very much less than today, where everybody's constantly walking around thinking evil things. It was possible for people in Treta Yuga to do that. And I keep looking for this verse. I thought it was in Mahabharata, and I've read it somewhere in Srila Prabhupada's books. Maybe it's discussed in Srimad Bhagavatam, but I haven't found the verse. It says that in Satya Yuga, the demons and devotees lived on different planets, and in the Treta Yuga, they lived on the same planets, but in different families and dynasties, different countries. And then in Dwapara Yuga, they lived within the same families, dynasties. And in Kali Yuga, they live together within us, within the same individuals. So yes, there was obviously some evil was able to enter. And also Ravana was there already too, right? Ravana was there to take Sita. So yes, there was evil. So we have announcements and then Guru Puja.
Yeah, Prabhu, one quick question.
Sure.
Prabhu, I have been having this question all the time, but I just want to get to know your thoughts. Because we say that just by reciting Ram's name, all our sins are gone. But Dasharath is the father of Lord Ram, and Ram was so kind to be born as his son. But why is it that he had to send Ram to forest simply because of his previous sin? Because it says that like so many lifetimes of sin are gone. So how do we understand this apparently contradictory thing?
Yeah, we should understand it as Leela. I believe that Dasharath had no sin. He's an eternal associate of Ram. And when Ram descends on earth, he brings his associates with him, and they display pastimes, but to set examples for others There's always an explanation of a sin or an offense or something that happens, but really it's being arranged by Yoga Maya to make the pastime go. There's a time when Ravana comes to Sita in Lanka, and Sita says, "I could kill you myself and destroy all your armies, but I'm letting Ram do it because for his glory." So similarly, Sita, you can think, well, why could Sita be kidnapped? But it's really in order to relish the emotional ecstasies. And we have to understand that, when Dasharath appears so distressed, he's actually still being very Rama conscious, and his distress at the fear, the impending separation from Rama, we can compare it to the distress of gopis in separation from Krishna. It's actually vipralamba bhav, and it's actually a great ecstasy. So this is how the pleasure of spiritual relationships is always increasing. It increases in waves of meeting and separation, meeting and separation.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Monisha?
Yes, Mataji. Should we have announcements first, Mataji, or group puja?
Dear, whatever you prefer. JM Prabhu is already here, so maybe
Okay.
he's also here. Malini is also here.
Malini Mata, do you have any announcements?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu. So today we are starting our first weekend for the Ram Navami Monthly Sankirtan Festival. And our goal for that festival is to read the entire Ramayana. And by the mercy of Gandharvika Mataji, she has already scheduled all the talks for Ramayana. So we are actually reading already. And then we'll also continue our first weekend for the Bhadra Purnima Monthly Sankirtan Festival, where we will distribute Srimad Bhagavatam sets between now and the Bhadra Purnima. It will be counted all the way till Bhadra Purnima. And for Ram Navami, we will discuss today in the calling party what would be our Bhagavatam goals. Thank you so much, Prabhu. And I know devotees are going out for book distribution today. Kautukarna Prabhu and everybody from the Western Sankirtan are going different places. Kautukarna Prabhu, if I don't see him here on the call, but if you want to join,
He just joined, yeah.
Oh, he's just joined. Okay. Kautukarna Prabhu, would you like to announce where you are going?
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandot Pranam. Please accept my humble obeisances, all good Shishla Prabhupada. Thank you for the nectarian reading, Prabhuji. It was so nice hearing Ramayana. So nice. I shared with few people and they said we want to hear the whole thing. So I was just thinking if we can have a playlist on YouTube for Ramayana readings so that I can share with them, that will be really nice to share this. We are planning to go at usual spots, but we are thinking to try something new. We might go to Costco. Madaji, we try something new because we have 3 weekends for Ram Navami MSF. So 2 or 3 teams will be going. I know Jaikanai Prabhu is going, myself, Pranam Prabhu. So we'll post the spots. We'll try something new. If you have something where many people come, which are similar to Walmart, where people come for groceries and they have time to talk while they are loading their groceries in the car. So if you have any suggestions, please let me know. We want to try such places. Thank you.
Jai. Thank you so much, Prabhu. So we'll see you all at the calling party at 2 p.m. Thank you so much for the opportunity to announce. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances, all good Shishla Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhu, for another wonderful class on Ramayana reading as well. So I'll quickly make announcements for Bhakti communities this week, what progress you have made. So as most of you know, Bhakti Community is an online community focused on introducing Bhakti to newcomers to ISKCON or Krishna consciousness. So whenever you give books, please do give Bhakti Community as well, so that it helps them to make progress. And this week we had wonderful exchange of Dadadi Pratigranati between Kautukarna Prabhu and Tim and Vicky. Kautukarna Prabhu are still there. You want to maybe share some nuggets on this exchange?
Actually, what happened was, they called me after they were planning to go to their mother's home for her birthday in Mountain View. So Vicky called me that they have some extra bread and she wanted to offer. I said definitely. I just wanted to make sure that there are no eggs in it, and because we offer the food to Krishna before we take it, and so we just want to make sure that it's clean, it's vegetarian. So she said, yeah, because they are also vegan. So she said there is just she actually wrote the ingredients on the paper. If you see, she has written the ingredients. Yes. And they came by, both of them, and Tim was curious, how do you offer? Do you have an altar? Because Tim has read Prabhupada Bhagavad Gita, he knows about altar. He said, you keep Prabhupada, right? You keep Prabhupada, and you have to have Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya, he said Chaitanya and Krishna there, right? I said, yes, yeah, you know more than I do, actually, I said. so he was very happy. I said, you can come in if you want. I can show you the altar. They came in and they saw the altar. They were really amazed. So Tim was asking me about Lord Narsimha Dev, and I explained him the story of the killing of Hiranyakashipu, and they were very happy. They had many more questions, but then we had to leave because they had to go to their mother's home. I by Krishna's arrangement, I had an extra box of Radha Vallabh Prabhu's lunch box, so I offered them that, and they honored that lunchbox with her mother at their home, and they were all very, very happy. They sent me, oh wow, that was such a nice prasadam. She sent me that it is prasadam. They know about this word because they have read it in Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita. So please pray for Tim and Vicky and for myself also, so that we can cultivate in the mood of affection and care, and to bring them closer to Krishna.
Thank you so much, bro. Thank you so much for all your effort, energy, and love and affection and care that you shower on everyone. And they have been, Tim and Vicky have been very regular. They've been very enthusiastic, asking very intelligent questions. So thank you for doing it continuously, and it helps us to grow community too. Thank you so much, Prabhu. We also have Krishna Prabhu, who had introduced Arman. So Arman joined Bhakti Community last week, and after the session, Arman said the session was amazing. He really liked it. The climate, honesty, and fluent environment. He said something that you feel there is a spiritual observation in human being. That feeling was great. It's my pleasure to fill a small place in your group. Let me know next time if I can join another session. So Arman had very good reflections to share, and it was good to have in the group as well. So thank you so much, Krishna Prabhu, for introducing Arman and taking care of him and helping him make progress. So those were the updates on the progress we are making in helping newcomers make progress. And as you know, we launched Spiritual Youth Circle last week. We have one of the Spiritual Youth Circle leaders, Priya Kishori. Are you there?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranams.
And pranams. Please go ahead.
Hare Krishna everyone, Dandavat Pranams, Jai Shri Prabhupada. We're very, very excited to be launching the Spiritual Youth Circle. This is a community of youth which will be getting together and presenting various topics to newcomer youth in a digestible way so that they can apply spiritual bhakti principles in their life. We have the university team, which focuses on kids' ages who might be joining university, and we have those who focus more on the high school group for that age group. Next group. And our first topic, which we're launching tomorrow, April 4th on, is how to overcome mental resistance. The youth prepare for these topics by doing extensive research. They read from Srila Prabhupada's books. They gather knowledge from their lectures. They also look at secular wisdom around these topics and mold everything together in a very, very succinct and digestible way, and practice these together before presenting them to the youth. And it will be a very interactive session. So if you know of any of your friends who have kids in these age groups, please share this information with them, and we'll be very excited to serve them in the spiritual youth circle. Thank you.
Thank you, Priya Kishori. Yeah, thanks so much.
Say something?
Please.
That Srila Prabhupada gave a lecture at a university, and then one reporter was there, and the reporter asked Srila Prabhupada, how come all of your disciples are young? Why are your followers all so young? Why aren't, and Srila Prabhupada looked around and he said, well, how come all the students in the university here are young? And she said, because that's the age for going to university. And he said, yes, and this is the age for taking up spiritual life. So the youth program is very important.
Thank you for sharing that, Prabhu.
Thank you, Priya Kishori. Again, Priya Kishori is one of our leaders. She leads the high school team. She is mentoring them, and the high school team has prepared a lot. So please do bless the team and pray for them so that they can help progress Krishna consciousness and share message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Srila Prabhupada with all the youths. So those were the announcements for this Bhakti Community this week. Thank you for Bandhur Mataji for the opportunity.
Nama Prasha Shilaya. Oh wait, Nama Sheshamanam Api Sachiputram Atra Swarupam Shirupam Tasyagrajam Urupurim Maturim Goshtavatim Radha Kundam Giravaram Ahoradika Madhavasham Praktayasya Pratit Kripaya Shri Gurum Tam Natosmi. Hey Guru Gyanada Dina Bandhu Swadana Dhata Kurunaika Sindhu Vrindavana Sinahitavatara Prasida Radha Pranaya Prachara. Hey Dina Bandhu Karunaika Sindhu Guru Prasadam Mayamanda Mudhe Laksha Parade Bahupapagade Tatpada Padme Stimatishcha Krishne. I bow down to the beautiful lotus feet of my spiritual master, by whose causeless mercy I have obtained the supreme holy name, the divine mantra, the service of the son of Sachimata, the association of Srila Sarup Damodar, Rupa Goswami, and his older brother Sanatan Goswami, the supreme abode of Mathura, the blissful abode of Vrindavan, the divine Radha Kund and Govardhan Hill, and the desire within my heart for the loving service of Sri Radhika and Madhava in Vrindavan. O spiritual master, O giver of divine wisdom, you are, O friend of the fallen, you are the giver of your own bliss, and you are the only ocean of mercy. Although dwelling in Vrindavan, you have descended for the welfare of fallen souls like myself, and you're preaching the divine love of Radha for Krishna. Please be kind upon us. O friend of the lowly, O Gurudev, you are the only ocean of mercy. I am a dull fool and have committed hundreds of thousands of offenses. I have fallen into a dense myriad of sins. Therefore, grace me with your mercy, so that my mind may be fixed on your lotus feet and on Sri Krishna. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain pure devotional service. I bow to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. Our only wish is to have our consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens our darkened eyes and fills our hearts with transcendental knowledge. He is our Lord, birth after birth. From him ecstatic prema emanates. By him ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor and the Lord and master of the devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your frame is spread all over the 3 worlds. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhagati Sama Krishna Prapti Ho Jaha Orte Krishna Prapti Ho Jaha Orte Guru Mukha Padma Bhagya Chirtit Kori Prabhupada Patita Pavana Radha Madan Mohan ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Bol.
Thank you so much, Monisha. Thank you, dear devotees. Thanks for joining. I was just wondering how will I be able to sit in the whole class today, because I got my vaccination and they gave me this sheet and there were some side effects listed here, and I got all of them last night, and I'm still like feeling pain and nausea. But in your association, I was able to go through and forget about my symptoms for some time. Thank you all so much, and especially thanks to Akruranatha Prabhu for spending us time with us today morning and making it auspicious. Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Thank you all so much. I think we'll end the call now, and there will be huge youth jam at 3 p.m. and then we'll continue tomorrow evening at 5 p.m. Hare Krishna.